let's go a little bit into security aspects of DNS. As I said earlier, sophisticated attacks, a lot of ransomware, phishing, and other schemes often use DNS as a mechanism to steer the traffic onto these malicious websites. So they stage this infrastructure in the internet using DGA algorithms, using different advanced algorithms to spin new domains and bypass the standard security, signature-based security appliances, which often do. If you look at this sample of a kill chain, typically in an early stage, which is where oftentimes monitoring a end user, which is sniffing the activity of a end user sitting somewhere in the ISP network or the honeypots, they monitor the end user, they look at what are the common destinations user goes to, they could profile and target some new domains. So that means once they do that, oftentimes the biggest vector of ransomware, any advanced threats or malware is leveraging phishing via emailing a malicious link. That's exactly where when a user is targeted and got compromised in the first go or even before compromising, when the user gets a malicious phishing email link, they oftentimes click it. So DNS control comes into picture by blocking right at that stage, right in the first early stage of the kill chain. So Zscaler's DNS control provides the capabilities to block all the risky and malicious domains like illegal, questionable, phishing, known malicious websites, adult content, and so on and so forth. So you could really achieve your first line of defense capability in the overall layered defense in depth approach we have by just enabling DNS control capabilities to begin with. And for some reason, let's assume that a user was able to click on that link and they got compromised. In the mid stage, which is where all the typical command and control channel is established and the endpoint is compromised, and they would then start slowly be able to access some malicious destinations. So this is where DNS control again provides a capability to stop all command and control botnet callbacks by blocking newly registered domains or newly observed domains and malicious IP addresses or rogue IPs based on the threat intelligence we have. And not only that, you could also have a granular filters around type of DNS requests, like block all MX, block all TXT records. So those advanced capabilities based on the DNS header would really simplify and provide an efficient security option or tool stopping something in the mid stage of a kill chain. Now, let's say a device is completely compromised and was able to establish a channel to a newly registered domain, which is not part of the signature or the new category. And in that stage, which is where the late stage advanced and sophisticated threats like data exfiltration can happen, leveraging DNS as a channel. And that's exactly where the AI ML based intelligence we have in identifying and categorizing those DNS tunnels and unclassified domains and IPs to stop that threat furthering. So as you could clearly see in this whole kill chain, DNS control could be leveraged both at the early stage, mid stage, as well as late stage to really have a efficient controls from a DNS standpoint. This would be an additional capability on top of how and what you will leverage the rest of the capabilities from cloud sandbox, advanced threat protection, intrusion prevention, and browser isolation, and so on. So with that, let me a little bit double click on one of the most sophisticated attacks oftentimes we have seen in past few years, which is exfiltrating sensitive data of organization using DNS as a channel. Oftentimes, many firewalls have to open or allow an access control policy towards UDP 53, which is a typical DNS request. What happens is, let's say in this example, let's assume that a user is already compromised or the endpoint is infected. So the infected endpoint, as we saw in the late stage of kill chain, would already have an existing C2C channel established to that malicious domain or bad domain, or even sometimes it's a domain which no one has intelligence about. So in that case, what happens is a typical DNS response goes out. On-prem firewall would allow it with UDP 53 access policy allow, and the ISP will resolve that to, in this case, evilpurple.com. And as you could see, evilpurple.com might have multiple subdomains, and most of these on-prem solutions would just have intelligence about just evilpurple.com, not necessarily the subdomains. That's exactly where the subsequent records will leverage the TXT or the RR record of DNS request to put some encrypted information in that repent to the top level domain. So that is how the communication between a compromised endpoint and a malicious attacker's infrastructures will happen, establishing a C2C channel. So they would take a large file at the endpoint, they would break it down into multiple small chunks and encrypt it into some gibberish text, and that text gets appended in front of each of these domains. And there would be multiple hundreds of thousands of DNS requests would go to that particular evilpurple.com, and the attacker will be easily able to put together all this gibberish text and use some keys to decrypt and exfiltrate the data. So this is one of the most advanced techniques which we have seen with many customers, and it is increasing. We have a capability leveraging ML and AI to block this type of functionality. And as you could see on the left side of the screen, DNS Control or DNS overview dashboard offered on the ZIA admin console gives you a complete visibility of what are the top DNS tunnels detected, what are the different app categories these tunnels belong to, which user is accessing, and what is the traffic volume or number of requests going to these, and so on and so forth. And not only that, we have a lot of granular policies which enable you to have a better and efficient security posture leveraging DNS capabilities. So, little bit on DNS tunnel security, just to give you some details. To identify some advanced threat like DNS tunnels, it is a lot more important to have context. Without context, it is impossible to identify these sort of threats. As you are aware, Zscaler logs every transaction of every user or endpoint for 180 full days. That's a massive big data we collect from every endpoint, every user across the organization over 6 months of time. This information is very much required to correlate and identify these advanced DNS tunnel exfiltration activity. Our algorithm in the backend will look at some of the features of machine learning would be around entropy. How is the entropy of each of these domains? What is the variation we are seeing? What is the volume of data change we see around the request entropy? And then we also look at the number of subdomains within a given domain. So we keep track of if a new domain is seen from an end user, we look at the entropy, we look at how many subdomains are part of that, and we build a tree behind, as you could see in the bottom of the screen, and we start scoring and providing a number of risk score for domain and subdomains differently. And then we look at how many number of requests are going out for this domain. Let's say an user, all of a sudden we see an activity of 10,000 requests happening in 1 hour. That is definitely not normal. There is something suspicious or anomalous going on. We use these sort of indicators and information from the logs to constantly keep a risk associated with these domains and identify and flag them as a DNS tunnels. And also keep in mind the advantage of Zscaler's cloud security platform is cloud effect. As we learn and identify these tunnels from one customer, automatically this gets pushed to all the customers from a signature standpoint so that they are protected even if this traffic is not seen on their end users or in their tenant. So there are also some scenarios where you oftentimes see good tunnels. Some vendors use this DNS tunnel as a technology to push updates onto the endpoint. For example, some of the Symantec endpoints and other common endpoint users, AV companies, they do push these updates using DNS tunnels. Those are oftentimes flagged as good tunnels. So that's why you will see in our policy framework something called commonly unknown DNS tunnels, commonly blocked DNS tunnels, and common allowed DNS tunnels, as in the screenshots on the left bottom of this slide. And not only that, as you could clearly see, the DNS policy framework or filtering rules we provide has lots of granular capabilities in terms of user, location, device, the destination they're trying to reach, the countries they're coming from or destined for, and what type of record or request type you want to support. How do you want to handle the request, whether you want to leverage Zscaler's resolver or you want to sinkhole it to a particular destination, or you want to forward it to an upstream ISP providers, DNS resolvers, and so on and so forth. It's a very granular and most comprehensive set of capabilities we offer from a DNS policy standpoint.